So Love Hurts is an action comedy with some romance thrown in. And when I mean romance thrown in, I mean romance thrown in at the last minute by someone who probably forgot that, there was supposed to be a love story here. Because you would think, for a film called Love Hurts, being released around Valentine's Day, there would be some romance. Like, I know, like, the trailers have, prepped everyone to see Ke Huy Quan performing more cool martial arts and, having a little bit of, like, an absurd tongue-in-cheek nature to it. And some of that is there, but, wow, Love Hurts is just, it's so disjointed and doesn't really know how to build up a good vibe or flow with like its action, because it has a decent staging. I mean, Ke Huy Quan, he's, taking on another role after Everything Everywhere All at Once. He plays Marvin Gable, who is a former hitman who is now working as a happy-go-lucky realtor. He enjoys his life of just, selling homes, and, that's the way that he loves it. But then some hitmen come knocking at his door, and he has to face down his past. Namely, he has to face down two people. One is Rose, played by Ariana Dubois, who arrives as kind of like the woman that got away from Marvin. Or rather, the woman that Marvin let go, like he was supposed to kill her, and he just kind of lets her go because he kind of loves her. Like, I know it's implied that the two of these characters love each other. And there are a few moments where they try that, but just they have... There's no scene for them to, like, explore that, where it just feels like they have no romantic or sexual chemistry throughout. In fact, the few times that they do have that kind of romantic back and forth, it just kind of falls on, like, simple platitudes, or it's internal monologue that they're not sharing with each other. That's just like the love angle isn't there. Okay, but that might not matter for some people, because the film branded itself as an action comedy, so can it deliver on the action and the comedy? Well, on the action, it kind of can. Like, there are some good moments of brutality and then kicks and punches here and there, but the film never really builds up to them. They just kind of happen inexplicably, because there is that moment where, like, if you've watched the trailers, that, Marvin is gonna like reactivate his hitman self after being, beaten up by these hitmen who come after him. So you're kind of like waiting for that moment where, there's that moment of shock, that surprise where Marvin is kind of like snapped out of like his enjoyable life and realizes that his hitman past is coming back to haunt him. But it just arrives abruptly, and it's just like, oh, okay, I guess we're going away from like the suburban dysfunction comedy for a moment here to have this absurd action scene where Marvin is attacking this hitman in his office. Not bad, but then the film just kind of like struggles to find something to do. Like, it mostly just tries to find ways to get to the next fight sequence. Which, to the film's credit, the fight sequences are a little bit creative. I like the way that, like, Ke Huy Quan, embodies a little bit of Jackie Chan by using, like, pencils and cookie cutters and, stuff you can find around the kitchen, and just all manner of material to use as weapons, where the fight scenes on their own are pretty good. In fact, if you mash them up, it would probably be a better movie than this. Because a lot of, like, the comedy moments, when it's not just, like, the slapstick going on, they don't really hit, and I think that's just because there's this unwillingness to kind of build up the characters as anything more than jokes. Like, there are some other, like, subplots throughout. Like, one assassin who comes after Marvin wields knives, and he kind of forms a little bit of a bond with Marvin's assistant. And there are these other two hitmen where one of them is married and he's having marital issues. He's trying to work that out over the phone, and you would think, okay, like, it almost kind of feels like they're kind of trying to stage like a little bit of like a Love Actually with like action sequences here. But it really isn't that. It really just feels like we're trying to find jokes in between so that we can, get to like the next big fight sequence, so that when Daniel Wu arrives, who, plays Marvin's brother, they can have like this big showdown where they fight each other. But by the time you get to that showdown, we've spent so little time getting to know and like these characters that I really didn't care about whether or not Marvin would win his big fight with his brother Alvin, or Knuckles, who's like a member of this gang who apparently this film takes place in Milwaukee, and it's this group of this Milwaukee gang led by Daniel Wu, who he doesn't really have any personality. The only personality that he has is that he drinks boba tea and that he stabs people with his straw. And that's about it. I wish I could say there's more. There isn't. That's his whole character. He drinks boba tea and he stabs people with like the big straw. That's about it. Like the film is so lazily written with like these characters to the point. Here's how bad the writing is. Sean Astin shows up in this film. And Sean Astin, like, you know, this is an actor who's known for roles where he dies. And even this film outright admits, like, you know, it has his character pretty much say, look, I see what's going on here. I'm getting confronted by these hitmen. I'm probably going to die. Yep, that's what happens. And it's like, you can see the joke there. You can see there's almost a joke there. There's almost something funny there. They just have to find a little bit more creativity. They got to bring it home instead of just focusing on the violence and getting to the next fight scene. But they don't. And even worse than, you know, not landing any of the jokes is that they don't even try with the romance here. But like, because, you know, like Rose is more the chaotic one and Marvin's a little bit of, you know, cautious about trying to put his hitman life behind him. And they don't really have any moment to connect. In fact, there's a perfect moment where, like, you know, they're hiding out and they have a down moment and Rose goes off to shower. And you think, okay, this has got to be the moment. This has got to be the scene where either, you know, Marvin walks in on her or, you know, he thinks about joining her in the shower. There some sexual tension, any at this point. Like, even just a bit of a glance at that point would have been something. And it's not there. And it's like all these characters just become, you know, like they don't even feel like people. They just feel like, you know, vehicles for getting, like, just players in this video game of like the next action sequence where they throw knives at each other and shoot at each other and punch and kick and stab with straws and weapons and whatever they can find. And I just don't care about it. I don't even, like, here's how bad this film is. There's also an overarching plot about stolen money that you entirely forget about, that by the time the film gets to the end, there's this big raid from these higher up gangsters. Like, wait, where did they, oh, right, there was something to do with money about being stolen, but it was, this film, it feels very much like a rough draft. It feels like they had an idea on paper, but it wasn't fleshed out enough, and they rushed it into production, and, you know, they tried to force in jokes, and they didn't try with the romance, and it's just, I'm glad at least by the end scene at the very end of the film that Marvin says that he loves Rose, because barely anything else in the film makes it clear that these two are in a relationship, you know. So yeah, this is Love Hurts is an action comedy that tries to triple as a romance, but forgets to add in the romance, and it just ends up as hollow as like those little candy hearts where they have, like, you know, very basic declarations of love, and then you taste it and it's just, it tastes off. It's very much an off action film that, you know, it needed some extra work on it, because it's just it's not working. And Ke Huy Quan deserves so much better than a half thought movie like this.